Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen is rude to the staff and really ends up paying for it. I yelled at a customer and she ended up crying. Yesterday, a couple came in just before the dinner rush. From the moment they sat down, the woman was already being difficult. They ordered their food, and when it all came out at once, she immediately started complaining. Apparently, she wanted the soup first, followed by the fries and the appetizer, in that specific order. No big deal, right? It got busy, so we just used the food items to serve other customers while I worked on her request. 20 minutes later, I brought out her remade appetizers and fries, expecting things to calm down. Before I even had a chance to set the food on the table, she was already frowning, insisting the food wasn't hot and it had been sitting in the back for ages. I tried to stay calm. Ma'am, I promise, these items were just made. I watched the kitchen remake them for you. But she wasn't having it. She stuck her fingers in the food, poked around, and said, "See? It's warm, but not hot. It's not even sizzling." I was losing my patience, but I kept it together. "Ma'am, I assure you, these are fresh. The kitchen just made them." She demanded the food be remade again, and that's when I snapped. "If you want me to toss this perfectly good food and remake it, you'll have to pay for it." Her face flushed. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she exclaimed. "I've had a rough day. I came here to relax, and you're making it worse." I stood firm. "I'm the owner of this place. I don't care how stressful your day was. It doesn't give you the right to disrespect my staff or me." She went quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe she'd calm down. But no, she started crying. The tears just welled up in her eyes, and she put her hand to her face as if she couldn't believe what was happening. "Why are you treating me like this? I just wanted a nice meal," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I've had such a hard day, and this is how you're treating me?" The whole restaurant went silent for a moment, and I stood there unsure of what to do. I mean, I wasn't expecting her to start crying over some fries. I didn't know what was worse, her meltdown or the uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. I tried to soften my tone, but I didn't back down. "I'm sorry you're having such a rough day, but it doesn't give you the right to take it out on the people here trying to help." She just shook her head, the tears streaming down her face. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered, looking down at her plate. Her husband looked embarrassed, but he didn't say anything. He just kept giving me a glare that could cut glass. We remade the food for her again, and when I dropped it off, she barely touched it, but muttered, "Thank you, it's hot now." When the server came by to check on them, the woman told her, "He's embarrassed of me. He doesn't understand how hard my day was. He's treating me like I'm the problem." They paid for everything, like I told them they had to, and left a 20% tip for the server. But I could tell the woman didn't really feel any better, and I didn't particularly feel good either. It was a lot more dramatic than I expected, and I didn't get the satisfaction I thought I would from snapping back. Now I'm just sitting here, waiting to see if she leaves a review. Not sure how I feel about the whole situation, but I guess it's one of those things that makes me realize that no good deed or fried food goes unpunished. Am I the jerk for being upset that I found out my wife was pregnant via social media? Plus update. I'm 29 and she's 27. We've been together for 4 years, married for 2. We're both from the same hometown, but currently live in a different city. She's in our hometown for a family event, while I stayed back due to work. We've been trying to get pregnant for 3 months, and now it's finally happened. The problem is the way I found out. One of my friends congratulated me by posting a screenshot in our group chat, a screenshot of an Instagram story shared by one of my wife's friends. The post showed my wife crying and hugging some of her friends, with the caption, "You are going to be the best mom." I called her immediately, and she picked up quickly, sounding excited. She said, "I have news, babe." All I could say was, "I know, you're pregnant." She replied, "Wow, babe, how did you know?" I just said, "Saw it on Instagram. Didn't think to call me first, huh?" She sounded confused and said, "What? I didn't post anything." I shot back, "Yeah, but your friends did. That's one way to find out I'm going to be a dad. Thanks." And I hung up. I was furious. She kept calling, but I ignored her until my sister called me shortly after. My sister asked what was going on because she had just arrived at my in-laws' house and everyone was freaking out. My wife had locked herself in her room. I explained what had happened, and my sister immediately said, "There's no way she would do that." I snapped back, "Well, she did." My sister told me she would find out what was going on. A little while later, she called me back to explain. By then, I had calmed down a bit, thinking it was probably just a thoughtless friend who posted without permission. But my sister filled me in on the details, and I felt even worse. My wife had been hanging out with a friend when she realized she was late on her period. They joked, "What if you're already pregnant?" and bought a bunch of pregnancy tests, which all came out positive. They got excited, told her parents, and texted a few friends in town to come over. From the moment she found out to the moment her friend posted on Instagram, only about 2 hours had passed. In that short span, my wife managed to tell at least 10 people before telling me. To make things worse, the argument happening when my sister arrived wasn't even about me. Apparently, my wife's other friends were mad at the one who posted on Instagram, saying it was a horrible thing to do. However, they also couldn't understand why my wife hadn't called me first. Eventually, I called my wife back. She was crying and apologizing, saying she had been planning to surprise me, and that's why she hadn't told me right away. I didn't believe her. I pointed out that if she had been planning to surprise me, she wouldn't have been ready to tell me the moment I called. She went silent. I told her I needed time to think, and she yelled, saying we couldn't just walk away from this and needed to talk. I replied, "Why do we need to talk? So you can lie again?" And I hung up. Since then, my phone has been blowing up with messages, but I'm exhausted. I don't know why, but this whole situation has drained me. I've cried randomly, which is unusual for me because I'm not the kind of person who cries easily. This isn't supposed to be a huge deal, but it feels like I've been hit by a truck. My sister sent me a message that has been sticking with me. "Hey, I know this sucks, and it was a crappy thing for her to do, but don't let this ruin it for you. You're going to be a dad. You're going to be an amazing dad, and that's great. The only thing keeping me going right now is knowing I'm going to be a dad. I've dreamed about this moment, and all I want is for this baby to be healthy. I'll probably swallow my pride and pretend I'm okay just to keep my wife from getting too emotional during the pregnancy, but I'll deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, I just need to sit with my feelings." Just to clarify a couple of things. Do I think the baby might not be mine? Classic Reddit. No chance she cheated. She works from home, and we have security cameras inside our house, so that's not happening here. She doesn't do girls' nights, and her best friend in the city we live in is actually one of my female coworkers. The three of us hang out together a lot. They text each other frequently, but they almost never hang out one-on-one. If they do, it's at our house, and I'm usually in the next room. Also, my wife is the clingiest person alive. When I'm at work, she texts me every 30 minutes. When I'm home, she's always in the same room as me, if she's not cuddling up to me, that is. When we're out, she's always holding my hand or arm and literally doesn't leave my side. Honestly, I love it most of the time because it makes me feel loved, but sometimes it's a bit much. We actually had a fight about it a few weeks ago because I needed a little more space. For a moment, I wondered if that fight was the reason she didn't tell me about the pregnancy right away, but it's probably not related. As for her friends, they're all good people. I've known them for a long time now, and my sister is part of their friend group. Some of them have been friends since they were around 12. My wife is the only one who lives in a different city, so whenever she's back in town, they always spend a lot of time together. I cannot emphasize enough how out of character this whole situation is for her. She has her flaws like everyone else, but being inconsiderate is not one of them. That's why I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like I might be completely wrong about all of this, because she wouldn't do something like this on purpose. There's just no way. So I sent her a text saying that everything was fine and that I would drive the 4 hours to come and talk. She was actually awake and asked if she could call. When she did, she said she wanted to come home. I told her I was coming to pick her up. She asked, "Are we okay?" I just said yes, and she started to cry. I told her I was very happy, that I was dying to see her, but we would need to talk about everything. She calmed down a bit after that. I asked for a day off, and my boss was fine with it, so I'm actually on my way to my hometown right now. Update. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, my wife was sitting on the sidewalk waiting for me. The moment she saw me, she jumped up, hugged me tightly, and kept apologizing. She was crying, repeatedly saying how sorry she was. I held her for a moment before we went inside to her room. I told her I was really tired and needed a nap before we talked. We ended up lying down together and slept while holding each other. When we woke up, we finally had the conversation. It felt like an endless loop, me asking her to explain what happened and her repeatedly saying it was her fault and that she had been stupid. She kept insisting she had ruined a big moment in our lives and that nothing else mattered except apologizing. I tried to dig deeper, but she avoided specifics, saying she didn't want to make excuses. Instead, she focused on taking responsibility and apologizing. Eventually, I gave in, told her I forgive her, and that everything was fine. Still, I wanted more clarity, so I decided to talk to her friend, the one who had been with her all day and bought the pregnancy tests with her. Her friend's account shed a lot of light on the situation. She explained that after my wife tested positive, they spent about an hour freaking out and brainstorming ways to tell me or surprise me. During this time, my mother-in-law came home and they shared the news with her. Together, they decided to invite some of their friends over to help come up with ideas. The friend confirmed that the group discussed keeping the news quiet for now since my wife hadn't told me yet. They even made it clear that no one should post anything about it. The girl who ended up posting the Instagram story was part of these discussions. According to the friend, the photo was taken during the moment another friend arrived and heard the news. Despite being explicitly told not to share anything, the girl decided to post it anyway. When confronted, she initially claimed she didn't realize she wasn't supposed to post it, but when pressured further, she admitted she just didn't care. She then left, blocked everyone in the group, and hasn't been heard from since. No one knows why she did it. Some speculate she might be jealous of my wife, but at this point, no one really cares. My wife and I have also blocked her, and we're cutting all contact with her moving forward. My sister later confirmed the friend's account. When she first called me, she had assumed my wife told everyone and forgot to tell me. After speaking to my wife's other friends and my mother-in-law, she realized that wasn't the case. My sister explained that when I called my wife essentially said, "Forget it, I'm telling him right now," because she was so excited to share the news with me. On the drive back home, my wife and I had another talk, this time with all the details cleared up. Her story lined up with what the others had told me. She apologized again and emphasized that I'm her #1 priority. She admitted that this was one of the dumbest things she's ever done and promised to make it right. At her insistence, we've scheduled a couples counseling session next week. I honestly don't think it's necessary, but she's worried I forgave her too quickly and that I might be bottling up my feelings. She wants me to have a space to express myself fully, which, honestly, is just another reminder of how much she cares about me. Her concern for my feelings is enough for me to chalk this up as a one-time mistake. So far, everything's looking good. We're moving forward together. I'm excited about becoming a dad, and I'm ready to put this behind us. Am I the jerk for repurposing the wedding fund and refusing to compromise? Note: I'll be referring to my fiancé as my husband because we've been together for 7 years, living together the whole time, and are currently planning our wedding. So I have 2 kids, my daughter who's 12 and son who's 6, from different fathers. My ex, who is my daughter's father, and I have a joint savings account where we've each been depositing £10 per week since I found out I was pregnant with her. After 13 years of contributions, at £20 a week between us, her account now holds £13,000 and is growing by a little over £1,000 a year. When I found out I was pregnant with my son, I set up a savings account for him too. My fiancé, his father, already had a pre-existing account with a couple hundred in it and wanted to build off that. Because of this, son ended up with separate savings accounts, one managed by me and the other managed by my fiancé. After several years of saving £10 a week, the account I manage for son now has £3,600 in it. If my fiancé had also been contributing £10 a week, as my daughter's father does for her, then son should have over £7,000 by now. However, my fiancé recently admitted that the account he manages for son has only a couple £100 in it. This means not only has fiancé consistently forgotten to contribute as planned, but he's also made withdrawals from son's account, once for half the cost of a school uniform and another time for a football kit. The purpose of these savings accounts is for the kids to access them at 18, untouched in the meantime, so they can use the funds for university, a car, rent, or even something frivolous if they choose. It's upsetting that the principle wasn't respected. Financially, I make more than my fiancé, but not by much. I could mass deposit the missing funds into my son's account now, which would mean tightening our belts next month. Alternatively, I could double my weekly contributions to my son's account until the difference is made up, which would take about 7 years. My fiancé, however, thinks we should either total the savings in both the kids' accounts and divide them equally, or take the missing amount from my daughter's account. He claims he can't afford to make up the shortfall right now and also can't commit to £20 a week for the next 7 years. We have shared savings, including about £2,000 in an emergency fund and a joint account for household expenses like food and bills. While we could technically take the money from the emergency fund, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's for emergencies, not fixing budgeting oversights. At the same time, it doesn't feel right that daughter's savings are significantly higher than my son's, even though this isn't her fault or mine. Taking money from daughter's account was never an option as far as I'm concerned, but fiancé suggested it. To be clear, I make the most money out of all the parents, followed by my fiancé, then my ex, my daughter's father. As a potential solution, I've reconsidered the wedding fund, which has about £2,000 in cash. If I put the wedding fund into my son's account, we wouldn't need to touch the emergency savings. Doing so would bring my son much closer to where he should be, and fiance would only need to contribute double for a couple of years to make up the remaining difference. Update. When I pressed him again about why he didn't have the money to make up the difference in our son's account, he just said he didn't. I asked him to show me a bank statement, payslip, or anything that could explain his financial situation, especially since he had just been paid on the 28th and it was now the 30th. He refused. I told him that if we're combining finances in any meaningful way, I should be able to see where his money was going. His response was to say I wasn't showing him my personal information either. To prove my point, I immediately pulled up my banking app and I showed him my balance and transaction history. After some back and forth, he finally showed me his most recent statement, which his bank had emailed him earlier that day. What I saw left me stunned. He has nearly £60,000 in his personal, current, and savings accounts, money he has clearly kept solely for himself. Despite this, he had been trying to guilt-trip me into taking funds from my daughter's account to fix his mistake. We had a huge fight about it, and he's staying at a hotel tonight, which it turns out he can more than afford. Seeing how much he has in savings, while knowing he chose to pressure me into compromising my daughter's future, has completely changed the way I see him. It's not just a trust issue at this point. It's the realization that he could hoard tens of thousands of pounds for himself while knowingly try to take from my daughter's account. I cannot see myself marrying him after this. Not ever. Update. When I asked him what he was thinking, his response floored me further. He said he didn't see the point in creating a savings account for our son for when he turns 18 because he's only 6. I tried explaining the entire purpose of saving, building it up over time, so it's there when he needs it, but he brushed it off, repeating that our son wouldn't need the money for years. He dismissed the last 7 years of effort and commitment as pointless and trivial. I told him that he could have told me the truth at any point in the last 7 years, or even in the past few days as I agonized over how to fix the discrepancy. Instead, he lied, watched me stress and worry, and dismissed me as being dramatic and overreacting. He's now staying in a hotel, and we are officially on a break. While I don't see myself forgiving him anytime soon, we do have a son together, and I know I'll have to find a way to co-parent and be in the same room as him. But right now, I don't know how to move past the deceit and betrayal. I hate to say it, but this relationship most likely can't survive, and it shouldn't. These types of trust issues are hard to get past. You say you need to be able to be in the same room with him and co-parent, but that doesn't mean you have to marry him. If I were you, I would deposit the wedding account into your son's account. Sue this dude for child support and put $40 a month from that into his account to match what you're already depositing. It will suck because it's $40 less you'll have for his actual support, but you seem to be making a good living. I would also make sure your son knows, when the account is turned over to him at 18, that the money came from you and only you. But that's just because I'm petty. OP. It hasn't survived. I do still need to figure out how to co-parent, but I'm not marrying him. I'm not going to touch the shared funds right now. I want to consult a lawyer first, just in case putting shared funds into the account, even if it is for our son, could have legal repercussions. I do make a good living, and I don't really need child support to maintain our current lifestyle, but I'll see what the lawyer says. Am I the jerk for calling out my boyfriend's family for changing the sleeping arrangement rules to favor his brother and sister-in-law? I, 24 female, and my boyfriend Nathan, who's 26, have been together for 6 years. This year, we traveled to his parents' house for Thanksgiving. For context, Nathan is one of 4 brothers: Alex, who's single, Jack, married to Jill, Nathan, and me, and Luke, who's married to Millie, who have a 2-year-old. Everyone lives out of state except for Luke and Millie. Nathan and I have the longest drive at 9 hours. Here's the issue. Nathan's parents, Mary and John, have only 2 guest bedrooms. 3 couples tend to visit at a time, meaning someone has to sleep on an air mattress in between the rooms. The first year I visited, I was told they'd rotate who gets the air mattress to keep it fair. But after 3 years on it, we were told it was now first come, first served. Nathan's job doesn't allow much holiday time, so we're almost always last to arrive and stuck on the air mattress. While annoying, we understood. It seemed logical. This year was different. Nathan and I got Monday through Thursday off and would arrive first. I talked to Mary about how we were finally going to get a bedroom, and she laughed, saying, "Yep, first come, first served." Millie, who I've grown close to, knew we were thrilled about the prospect of getting a bed this year. She even decided to come early so we could hang out. We planned that I would take the twin room and she'd take the queen. Here's where it gets frustrating. The day we left, I texted Mary our estimated time of arrival. A few hours later, Millie texted me saying Luke had spoken with Mary, who mentioned Jack and Jill would get the queen room and Luke and Millie the twin room. leaving Nathan and me on the air mattress again. Luke called Mary out, reminding her of first come first serve rule, but she suddenly claimed she never said that and justified her decision by saying Jack and Jill would be staying an extra day. For context, Jack and Jill were arriving a day later than us, so this reasoning felt like an excuse. When we arrived, Nathan brought up this rule again, but Mary got defensive, claimed she didn't remember saying it, and refused to budge. I made several sarcastic comments because I felt this was really unfair. I pointed out that rules are rules until they don't serve Jill. I also said that we always did it a certain way until it meant that Jill would have to take the air mattress, and she could come up with any justification for it, but that doesn't make it fair. I even pointed out that it was silly for us to now have to board our dogs and drive 8 hours before anyone else got there just to have the rules change at the last minute. She had plenty of time to bring this up during the many conversations we had leading up to this. She became increasingly sassy about the situation, which left us feeling defeated and frankly a little targeted. Am I the jerk for speaking up or for thinking Mary unfairly changed the rules to suit Jack and Jill, leaving us stuck with the short end of the stick? Not the jerk. And honestly, I'd just leave if it were me. Every time you guys dance their dance, they think it's okay. I'd go home to my nice bed, get the dogs, order a half-baked pizza tomorrow, and cook it up on Thursday. They're being rude, and if this is their status quo for the foreseeable future, you want none of it. My wife's sister tried to kiss me, and now my wife is spiraling. Plus final update. My wife's sister made a pass at me at a recent family gathering, and I have no idea what to do. For context, I think my wife, Jenna, is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister, Mary, who is very conventionally attractive as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional, but in my opinion, striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple of years ago, and now she works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, "Just wait until you see my sister." When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way, and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me, and I asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one, pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me to not cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one, and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to make little comments about me. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on this before. She'll cool it for a while, but eventually starts doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens, my wife is upset for days, and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago, we were at my mother-in-law's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the heck she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both have been thinking, and kept insisting, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind, and I ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home, she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt her, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything, and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days, Mary has been calling and texting my wife, doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the hottest girl I've ever seen. Which I had to assure my wife a million times that I did not say that, and I never would, even though she believes my account of the situation. She's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating, she pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her. She says that she feels hideous and disgusting, and I don't know what to do. This is the lowest that I've ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. Reddit, what should I do? All family gatherings that include Mary must now be non-attendable. Your wife knows what an awful person her sister is, and hopefully the rest of the family does too. To be honest, your wife's sister is evil. You have reassured your wife of your love and faithfulness. Your wife is incredibly insecure about herself, so obviously a professional may be in order for her and for you too. You love your wife, so stand by her and be there to support her. OP. My in-laws definitely enable her behavior. She's the golden child. They brag about her constantly, even though my wife is a neuroscientist. Their mom was a pageant queen, and she was their dad's much younger trophy wife. Honestly, we may have to go no contact with all of them. Update. Several people have asked how my wife's family feels about all of this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child. Even though my wife is a neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally. My wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us that she works at a university." Whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so angry to think about how her family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some people asked me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that, other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything like this. That possibility just didn't even exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually, and that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary's crap down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, on to the update. The night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister, I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable with being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date, while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her entire life, but that only she can decide where she wants them in her life or not. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was wrong, and she's been acting this way for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need too. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image and self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has of course been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense that thankfully nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more, and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places, and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the queen that she is. I want to thank you all for your help. You really helped me understand this. Y'all are the best. Update. My wife loved the getaway weekend. We had a blast, and by the end of it, she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back, things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it. Many of you warned me that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years, and she's heard me vent about Mary, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently, Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a creep and everything that happened was my fault. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a video camera footage of the whole incident, and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, So my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private info and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a gross picture, not me, to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. At this point, it was clear we had to escalate things legally. I really wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted, but I think was pretty mean. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting them off completely. This happened on Friday, and on Sunday, Mary's best frenemy, Anne, sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond, then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week, and we'll be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.